Good afternoon, Dr. Russ.
Good afternoon.
So good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us today on Michelle's Conversations That Matter. It's sort of a warm day here in New Jersey. How's the weather up by you in Canada?
Not too bad. I think it's probably, we use different degree formulas. So
Yeah.
it's probably like 15 degrees, which you people would go, oh my God, 15 degrees. No, I think the equivalent for us in Fahrenheit would be about 62, 63 today.
Isn't that beautiful? I think we're all appreciating the warmth, the little like spurt of warmth.
Yep.
So, hey, thank you so much for saying yes to joining me today on Michelle's Conversations That Matter. We met on the amazing Clubhouse platform. I heard you sharing one evening in a room, and I said, I have got to talk to that guy. He's definitely someone I want to bring to my audience. So I'm really grateful that when I reached out, you said yes. So a little bit about my platform for people who do not know. I've created Michelle's Conversations That Matter to really elevate the conversation about brain health, mental illness, have people come away with some education, inspiration, empowerment about mental illness and well-being. So again, thanks for being here. Could you take a second, Dr. Russ, and just introduce yourself, who you are, where you live, and what you do?
Sure. My name is Dr. Russ Kennedy. I live in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, which is just above Seattle. I am an anxiety specialist, medical doctor, neuroscientist, developmental psychologist, psychedelic aficionado. What else can I throw in there? Stand-up comic, corporate speaker. Those are my kind of roles that I play in society. Generally, though, I deal with anxiety, and I have found ways that have just improved my life immeasurably. And I put that in my book when I call Anxiety RX. And my mission in life is to make sure that people don't have to suffer with anxiety the way I did, because I believe that traditional therapies that we have now are just not that effective. And I've developed a kind of a counterintuitive approach that's really helped me heal, because I tried like 50 different therapists, from high-level psychiatrists to basically witch doctors, and nothing really helped until I really did some psychedelics, and I really saw where my anxiety came from. And hopefully, we can unearth that today, Michelle.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I think that is what makes you so very unique in what you do, is you have such a cool lens on things. And we have a commonality in the fact that we both grew up with a bipolar parent.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
Yeah. So it's, I think growing up with chaos and just not really knowing, the manic periods were probably worse than the depression ones, because you never knew what he was going to do. And I think there is that sort of sense, because it's same-sex parent for us. Like mine was my father, yours was your mother. So that's the person you identify with.
Yeah.
And I think for me, because I identified with him so much, and he was a wonderful dad. Like when he was sane, he was a wonderful dad.
Yeah.
But I learned that it wasn't, in my child mind, it wasn't safe to love him, because he would go crazy. Right.
Yeah.
He would go psychotic. And for a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old boy to see their dad go psychotic, first time is a little odd, but after it happens on a regular basis, you kind of start pulling back. And one of my theories about anxiety is that you stop trusting love, and you stop trusting, and love is really, there's only two things in life. There's love and there's fear.
Yeah.
So if you stop trusting love, your life is slowly going to get filled up with fear. And that's basically what happened with me.
Wow, that's really insightful. I was going to ask you another question, but now I'm getting present to that, because the same thing, like with my mom, it was very, very similar, right? Like, I didn't know what to expect with her. And I just say typically that like that experience shaped me into the woman that I am. And it also taught me compassion. It also taught, like, I look for the good that it taught me. How do you think that experience with your dad shaped you and your anxiety and like what you do today?
Well, it made me want to search to help people who are suffering with mental illness, for sure.
Yeah.
My dad's mental illness was so severe. Even if he would have showed up today, 2021, I don't think they really could have helped him. I don't think they really could have helped him. But what my mission in life came to be was I tried to help people in a way that I couldn't help my dad.
Yeah.
I wanted to get into medical school. I wanted to become a doctor. I wanted to help people. But, he died 5 months before I actually learned that I got admitted to medical school. And I know he would have loved to have found out that I
Yeah.
went to medical school. So, there's a lot of pain still around that, Michelle. There's a lot of heartache that I'm still working through with my dad.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And I think it's a journey. People who grow up in that situation, those are your formative years. It'll stay with you, and like you said, until you continue to look and heal it. So um tell us about the book. Tell us the backstory about the book. You suffered, like you said in your introduction, from anxiety, and you just tell us what prompted you to say, I want to write this book and help people.
Well, it's funny. I was talking to one of my ex-girlfriends the other day because I'm usually, most of my ex-girlfriends, I'm still like, we're kind of friends with. Like I could call them up and we could go for coffee and it'd be fine. So I was talking to Robin the other day, and she said, "Congratulations on selling your 1,000th book. So in 4 months, I've sold 1,000 books, which is pretty good for a self-publisher, you know."
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah. And she said to me, she says, "You've been working on this book since we were together, and we were together in 2007."
Oh wow.
So it's one of those things that I've been telling people about this book for so long that I think a lot of them just thought, this thing is never going to get done. And that pandemics are great for writers. I'll tell you that, because there's nothing else to do. So you just finish that. But as far as the book, creating the book goes, is like I finally found a way of healing myself, because all the psychologists, all the EMDR, all the tapping, all that kind of stuff, it all helped in the short term, but it's kind of like the analogy that I draw is kind of like when you have a significant mental issue like anxiety or OCD or whatever, you have a hole in your boat. It's kind of like a rowboat. You've got a hole in it. Now you can bail water out, which is basically, think better, learn that your thoughts aren't real, all that kind of stuff. Or you can actually patch the hole in the boat. And I think patching the hole in the boat is what the book is all about. And it's what I did, which is basically find the place in your body where your alarm is stored. Because I believe that anxiety is really more properly called alarm, because that's what it is. It's an alarm state that's in our body. And then our mind is just a compulsive meaning making, make sense machine. So it reads that negative alarm state that usually comes from traumas that we forced down as children because we had to. You can't grow up with a bipolar parent and be able to be, engaged and emotional, because it's just not safe. So you've got to stuff that stuff down, and then it gets stored in your body, and forever it just resonates in your body. And then your brain constantly reads it. Because it feels uncomfortable, it makes up an uncomfortable story to fit the alarm that's stored in your body, which of course makes the alarm worse, which of course makes the stories worse. So you get into what I call the alarm anxiety cycle. And then so what the book is about is basically breaking the anxiety into anxiety, which is just purely thoughts of the mind. That's
Mhm.
all anxiety is. It's not painful. What is painful, however, is the alarm that's stored in your body. So what no one else has really done, and I can't believe they haven't done this until this point, is separate the two. So that's what I do in the book, is I teach you how to find the alarm in your body and realize that you don't have to compulsively add thoughts to it.
Mhm.
Because your mind will try and compulsively make sense of that alarm by giving you these negative thoughts. So people think they can think their way out of anxiety when thinking actually just makes them worse. And one of the things I love to say is you can't beat thoughts on their own turf. So when I see people and they say, "Oh, realize your thoughts aren't real. Realize that this isn't really happening. You're only just sort of making up a story of the future." Now, all that is true.
Right.
What I say is, like, don't even, when you get these thoughts, don't even go into your mind, because you're always going to lose that fight. At that point, you kind of put your hands on your chest or your belly or your throat or whatever, wherever you kind of feel that alarm in your body, and sort of sit and try and get into sensation. Smell an essential oil, put your hands on your thighs, put your feet on the ground, feel your butt in the chair, really get into sensation, because
Mm.
that'll bring you into the present moment, and it'll take you away from those repetitive thoughts of your mind. And then once you see that you don't have to add thoughts to the feelings, then you become free. Then it's just practice at that point. So really what we're doing, so when people say, when CBT and that kind of stuff, and I have nothing against CBT, I
Yeah.
really don't. I think it's valuable in its own right. I
Mhm.
just don't think it works as a standalone practice, right?
Right.
So I think my wife's a somatic trauma therapist, so she goes into the body all the time. I've learned a ton from her,
Mhm.
just about how to mix the neuroscience, doctor part of me in with this more ethereal part of the feeling, where the feeling is in the body, along with my experience with psychedelics, which just basically confirmed what I already felt. So it's really about learning that anxiety is really this alarm anxiety cycle. It's more about alarm in the body than it is about the thoughts of the mind. Thoughts of the mind are really just the byproduct. So, and it's really about sealing that hole in the boat, which is solving the problem from the body based place where you store that alarm, as opposed to just running around trying to fix your thoughts, because that won't work. It'll work temporarily,
Right.
but it won't work permanently. And that's the whole purpose of the book, is to create this brand new kind of counterintuitive theory on anxiety. So when people say, "Oh, is it just another anxiety book?" I say, "No, it's actually very, very different from every other anxiety book that's ever been written,
Mhm.
because it just doesn't we do address the mind, absolutely, but
Yeah.
we see the mind as just more of a byproduct of it. It's really
Mhm.
not the underlying cause. And once you start fixing the alarm in your body, then the thoughts just fade away because they have nothing to feed them anymore.
So I know people are going to ask. We have, I want to invite people who are watching, if they have questions, to just pop them in the comments and we'll get them answered. But I know that people are going to want to ask, and I'm going to ask it for them. How did psychedelics play into this for you? How did you leverage them, and how did it help you?
Yeah, well, around 2014, I was pretty close. I was pretty close to suicidal because I was living in these sort of 8 to 10 hour panic attacks all day with anxiety. I thought, if this is my life, I don't even know if my life's worth living if I have to do this. So a friend of mine who's a plant specialist, he said, "Look, we can take you through like a psychedelic journey. I've helped people do this before." And so basically, he took me through an LSD journey. And then during that LSD journey, not during it, because that was frightening and scary, and nothing in my brain made sense. But as I came out of it, I was given this message, and I really don't know where it comes from, that your anxiety, and this is basically what it said to me, your anxiety isn't in your head. Your anxiety is actually in your body, and it's in your solar plexus, and it's hard, it's sharp, it's purple. And I got this vision of where my anxiety or alarm is. And then as I came out of it, I kind of realized, oh, okay, well, maybe all this thought that I've been thinking that I've been doing hasn't really been helping me. If the problem is here in my solar plexus area, all this work that I'm doing up here, and I'm making the crazy symbol on purpose,
Mhm.
is not really going to help me,
Right.
right? So, and I didn't really, and then I went to an anxiety conference about a year later with Dr. Gordon Neufeld, who's a developmental psychologist. He wrote a book called "Hold On to Your Kids." He's a brilliant guy, and one of my mentors for sure. And then he said this: he said, "All anxiety is separation anxiety." And really, there's something about that really tricked in my mind. And I thought, I wonder if all alarm is separation alarm, which it is. If you see a child who's separated from their parents in a store, they
Yeah.
go into alarm. That's what
Yeah.
happens to them. So it's like, what if I started treating the alarm as opposed to treating the anxiety? And that is really when things started making a difference. I really started seeing that I had actually control over the situation. So when I felt anxious, quote unquote, really felt alarmed, I was able to go, okay, your mind, because you feel this alarm in your body, your mind is now just going to start pooping out. George Carlin calls thoughts brain dropping. So that's what I did. It's like your mind is just going to start pooping out these thoughts that are negative, and
Mhm.
you're going to believe them, but
Yeah.
you don't have to believe them.
Mhm.
So, and then in that, you can develop a separation between the alarm that you feel, and,
Yeah.
and isolate and highlight that, which I talk about in the book, how to find the alarm in your body, and then separate that. And then you get this tremendous amount of power, because before, your mind was trying to help you by giving you all these thoughts that might help you. But what they do is the thoughts just make you worse.
Mm.
So if what you have to do is go down into your body to heal it, what your mind does is it keeps you in your head, and you never actually get down into the place where the problem is in the first place. So people live with anxiety their entire lives. So that's what I say about my life's work, is to show people that they don't have to compulsively essentially believe everything they feel.
Mm.
And that's really what it comes down to. Because, so often we make anxiety worse. And once you realize you have the key and you don't have to add the thoughts to it, and you go into your body, you go into sensation, you go into feeling,
Hmm.
you want to develop a relationship with this alarm, which is, basically your younger self that got left behind,
Right.
traumatized, parents got divorced, parent died. Um, this stuff gets held in our body. And unless we sort of bring that back up gently and resolve it, it will always trigger us into, anxiety, OCD. The mind will always find a reason to make
Mhm.
sense of this uncomfortable feeling. So you really have to treat the uncomfortable feeling. And that's what I found on LSD and ayahuasca to some extent
Mhm.
was, look, this is in your body. Stop trying to fix it with your mind. And of course, being a neuroscientist
Yeah.
and someone who's very intellectual, I
Yes.
was just going right. I was just making myself worse. And the
Yes.
analogy that I draw is it's like I was in a hole and I'm digging myself and I'm going to dig myself out of this hole. I'm going to and every time I dug, I would go deeper and deeper and deeper. And I wouldn't realize, hey, you know what? You're just making yourself worse. Like you're not helping yourself.
Yeah.
So it is one of those things that I really want to help people see that their anxiety is really, a lot of it is self-created. And
Hmm.
healing from anxiety is just stopping doing the thing that's making it worse.
That's amazing. Ayahuasca. I've heard about that.
Yeah, it's the Peruvian. It's DMT actually, and it's a Peruvian plant medicine that blows the back of your head off. I would never ever do it again. I don't recommend it.
I heard.
The thing about people with anxiety is we're kind of like control freaks. Things that anxiety people hate most with anxiety is
Mhm.
uncertainty
Mhm.
because of what uncertainty meant in our childhood, right?
Mhm.
So we
Mhm.
hate uncertainty more than anything else. And LSD, psilocybin, ayahuasca, peyote, all that stuff basically just puts you into one big psychotic uncertainty soup. And it's very, very frightening. And I would
Yeah.
not recommend it to anyone. It's not like I said, oh, it helped me heal, so it'll help you heal. I don't actually recommend
Mm.
people with anxiety do psychedelics. Like, let me take one for the team, and I'll tell you in the book. I'll
Yeah.
tell you in the book the benefit I got with it, so you don't have to do it.
Yeah. That's amazing. Oh, that's great. When you were talking before, I was thinking, like, when you were talking about feeling the sensations in the body, like, I know that I've learned from other clinicians about the exercise of grounding. Is it similar to grounding when you start to feel and you start to smell and you start to see, or is it different?
It's different. Yeah.
Is it-
Can I take you through a little process, Michelle?
Sure, why not? I feel
Okay.
like last time I had an interview with Forbes Riley, and she like wanted to like do an exercise with me, and I was all resistant, and everyone was so up in arms that I didn't. So I'm a yes,
Okay.
yes. Keep me
I'm
through.
not going to traumatize you.
Okay,
But,
good.
think of a trauma in your youth. Don't pick like the worst trauma of your life by any means, but think of something in your youth that troubles you. And
Yeah,
if you want to share that, you can. If you don't, you can just keep it to yourself.
I'll keep it to myself.
Okay. So bring that trauma to mind. Close your eyes and just ground yourself. Ground your feet on the floor. Feel your butt in the chair. Relax your shoulders. Relax your jaw. And just bring that trauma to mind. Now focus somewhere between your chin and your pubic bone. It's usually in the midline. And it kind of feels a bit like, the way I remind people is, it's kind of like a heartache, when you go through a breakup. Is there a place in your body where you feel a tightness or a pressure or a pain when you think of that trauma?
Mhm.
And where is it?
Right here.
Okay. So just stay there for a second and just feel that, your own compassionate, loving touch. And then put your other hand on top of your first hand. And just really breathe that in and really feel your own touch in this present moment, and the sensation that you're in right now. And silently say to your younger self, because this is your younger self, that's showing herself to you. Like, I've got you. You're okay. We're okay. I'll never leave you. We are always together. We will be together for every day that we are on this earth. I will never leave you. So I can bring you out of it now for a second. Now that usually I take about an hour to do that with
Oh my
someone.
gosh. And I like want to cry hysterically.
Of course you do, because basically what's happening is you're connecting with that young Michelle that got hurt,
Hmm.
right? And at the time that this thing happened, you felt alone. You felt like there was no one, you maybe couldn't tell anyone, that you felt completely alone. So now what I'm showing you through touch is that you're not alone. You can go back there with her. And what I would suggest is, in your quieter moments, to bring that up with her again and say, that was really hard for you. And see if she says anything. Sometimes she'll talk back to you. Sometimes she'll say, yeah, that was really, really hard.
Hmm.
Like, I talked to people who had to, sort of, as an example, talk in front of their high school class, and they made a mistake, or their fly was open or something like that, and they got laughed at and traumatized.
Hmm.
And it's like, go back and say, it must have been really hard for you when those other kids were laughing at you,
Right.
and you must have felt really alone.
Right.
But you're not alone. I'm here with you.
Mm.
Because what happens, if I'll do a little neuroscience thing now, there's a structure in our brains called the amygdala, which people commonly call the fear center. It's not really that accurate, but it's not bad. And basically, the amygdala remembers everything that ever hurt you, ever. And you may not even be consciously aware of it. And I think the amygdala helps store that energy in the body, because the body is really the representation of the unconscious mind. So with you, it's sort of above in the middle part of your chest there. That's young Michelle. Whatever trauma that you went into there, how old were you at the time?
Maybe like 8 or 9.
Okay. Yeah. So talk to her like you're talking to an 8 or 9-year-old. The other thing that I do is have you got a picture of yourself around that age?
I do somewhere.
Yeah. 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 So basically talk to her,
Mm.
and not always verbally, because a lot of this stuff is unconscious. It's feeling based. So it's like, if you send her the message that, look, I've got you, even if you go back to that room or whatever it happened, and you can picture yourself sitting beside young you with your arm around her, or, your hands on her shoulders or whatever, just so that she has a felt sense that you are there, because there's parts of you that are still living with this trauma, and you still feel, because of the amygdala, and it has no sense of time, you still feel that you're going back into that. And that's when I see, when I talk to people and I counsel couples and stuff, is I say, any overreaction is an age regression. So when couples get into these huge fights, both of them have age regressed to being 8 or 9 or 10 years old. So they've got 2 9-year-olds fighting with each other. How well do you think that's going to go?
Well.
As Dr. Phil would say, how's that working for you? It's not going to do it very well. But that's the process that I take people through. Like, we didn't go very deep, but still, it got you to some tears.
Yeah. Oh my God. Very powerful. Yeah. Thank you.
So that's what I do with people. Usually I take them over 90 minutes or so. And I do other things other than that. But finding your alarm is a massive, massive part in your own healing. Finding where that is. A lot of people have it kind of in their belly. A lot of people, it's in their solar plexus. A lot of people, it's in the heart space. Some people, it's in their upper chest, like you had. And other people, it's more in their throat. When I see people with throat alarm, a lot of the time it's they couldn't stick up for themselves when they were younger. They couldn't say to a parent or a caregiver or an older sibling, stop this. Like, I can't do this anymore, right? And that's where the trauma gets blocked. And it's feeling that and showing that your younger self through your own feeling that this is how you're going to heal it. So all the talking to that part in the world is not going to make a big difference. It may help 10 or 15%, but until you actually feel it and connect with it and show that younger part of you that you're there and you're connected to her, then she can come out. Then that part can come out. You can bring it to the surface, and then you can heal it.
I love that. Oh my goodness. That's so powerful. So who are you treating now? You mentioned couples. Are you treating, tell us about your practice and like who you help now.
I mean, it's very informal, right now. My main goal was to get this book written because, like I said, I've been working on it for 14 or 15 years.
That's amazing.
And now I'm starting, to go on Clubhouse, and I'm starting to do other things. I do readings on people. They're fairly expensive. They're like $500 for 90 minutes. But I take people farther in 90 minutes than, they've been in therapy. The number of times that I hear, you've taken me farther in 2 hours, the last 2 hours that I've gone in the last 20 years. Because I go at the root of the problem. I'm not trying to deal with the superficial parts of it anymore. So I do very limited kind of one-on-one consultations. I'm working to try and do create some Zoom rooms, because I work with one person, like I would work with you, as someone who's a lot of people are very open to going into their old traumas. And when I work with them, everybody else in the room sees, how to do it, and then they can do it for themselves. So I'm trying to figure out how to work that right now. So, I mean, people can find me through my website, theanxietymd.com. That's usually the best way to find me, actually. But I'm not doing a whole lot. I find that the one-on-one consults really take a lot out of me, because there's a lot of me that I kind of read people. I wouldn't say I'm psychic by any means at all, but I've had over 100,000 patient encounters. So I know different categories of how people feel and how they react and that kind of thing. And I think there is an element of, like, empath nature or something like that. I do see things in people. And I find where their blocks are. Basically, that's what the sessions do, is I find where your blocks to loving yourself are. Because that part of your trauma, the part of the trauma that we just went into a few minutes ago, there's part of you that still rejects that girl. Right? So it's learning how, because it was a form of protection. So it's learning how to bring that little girl back into the fold again. And then people say, well, do I have to do that with every single trauma? It's like, no, once you start learning how to do it, once you open the right floodgates, things just start to heal on their own. And the little analogy that I draw is, those salt shakers where you sort of make a slight turn in the lid and it closes off, and then you make a turn and the holes open up. It's the same idea, So basically what I do with people is I get them to sort of turn their little salt shakers so that the holes are open, so that they can actually, feel this stuff and allow it to kind of move through them and feel it in such a way that it's safe to bring it back up again. So, Michelle, I don't really know where things are going to go in the next little while. So I don't do this for the money, despite the fact that I charge a lot for sessions. I do this because my passion is to make sure that people don't have to suffer like I did. And that what we use now to heal anxiety is not that helpful. I went through it all. I went through all the counseling, the talk therapy, the tapping, the EMDR, all that stuff. And it does help. There's no two ways about it, but it doesn't fix the underlying problem. And that's what I'm passionate about, is showing people how to, as Nicole LePera says, how to become a self-healer. So Nicole, I don't know if you know Nicole, but she's like the holistic psychiatrist. She has like 3 million followers on Instagram. Yeah. And she's just released a book called How to Do the Work. And I'm just anxious to get a hold of it. But at the top of my book, she's sort of written an endorsement for it. So she's plastered. She's helped me quite a bit, actually. Nicole.
I do believe that. I believe if we are given the tools, we have the ability to help ourselves heal. I think we live in a society, though, where a lot of people just want to relinquish their power because they're hopeless. They don't know. They're just suffering. So it's very easy to relinquish your power to what one professional wants to recommend, know?
Yeah. And, I've never met someone who struggled with anxiety who wasn't a victim, myself included, because what happens is that when we get trauma when we're kids, we are victims. If you're 7 or 8 years old, there's nothing you can do about this. You have to basically just grin and bear it. So you are victimized. And, Freud has this concept that I love called the repetition compulsion, which is basically what was familiar to you in your childhood, you will tend to unconsciously replicate in your adulthood. And I have a short story about that. My patient, Jane, who is this beautiful girl, woman, I guess, I've had her for my patient from the time she was about 18 till about 35. And she had all sorts of men, but she would only pick abusive alcoholics. Her dad was an abusive alcoholic, and that was her framework of what love was supposed to look like. Of course, consciously, she knew it wasn't helpful, but the unconscious programming that we go through that sort of makes this compulsion to repeat what we had in childhood is very strong. So if you don't see it, you just keep repeating it. And it's the same reason why people like lottery winners, 80% of them are broke in 5 years
Yeah.
because they got used to a certain set point of
Yeah.
money in their life, and they unconsciously replicated that when they got all this money. They
Yeah.
didn't feel comfortable unless they put themselves back into the same position. And so that repetition compulsion has been one of the biggest things that I use to help people understand why they do what they do. A lot of people, who had shame in their childhoods will replicate shame. They'll find ways of making themselves shameful. They'll have affairs, or become addicted to like drugs or alcohol or whatever, because it just replicates that same shame profile that they had when they were children. And it's not
Mhm.
really their fault in a way until you become aware of it. And when I make people aware of what their shame pattern is, or what the pattern is that they're replicating, then they can do something about it. It's that old Viktor Frankl statement, between stimulus and response, there's a space, and that space allows us choice. But if
Yeah.
we don't see it, if we don't see what we do,
Right.
then we just be it. If you can't see it, then you be it, then you're it, and you don't see any other way. And if you get into alarm, which a lot of us are, especially these days, all our coping strategies, our rational coping strategies go out the window, and then we're stuck with this alarm. And that's why the pandemic's been so horrible for people with mental health issues.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So I want to switch gears a little bit, because there's a fascinating aspect about you and your career that I want to talk about.
Okay.
So because I would never put this together, and I want to bring some levity to what you're sharing.
Sure.
So is it true you're a stand-up comedian in Canada as well?
Yeah. No, I toured with Yuck Yucks, the comedy club that goes across Canada. And for many years, I was a doctor in the daytime, and then I would go and do comedy at night. And some nights I would do like 6 or 7 sets a week, and I loved it, and it was great because it was a chance to fulfill my creative side. Medicine as a doctor, I think as you go through your career, and this is why I think many doctors burn out, is it kind of kills the creative part of you. You learn how to think in this very left brain analytical world, and the creative part of you just gets kind of squeezed out. So that's why I used to love doing stand up, because it would keep me creative. That's why I loved it. And of course I made no money at it. There's
But
lots
it also means you step on stage in front of people. Doesn't that induce anxiety?
It does. Yeah, it really does. But you know what? Curious you asked that. The anxiety that I would have on a day-to-day, kind of like this day-to-day kind of steady kind of panic attack kind of thing, is very different than stage fright.
Oh,
They're very, very different animals. So it's and people have asked me that before, and it's very different. The stage fright that I get is very different feeling than the anxiety that I have. And I think it's going back to what what I just did, is the alarm in my body doesn't come up in the same way when I step on stage, as when I'm just feeling anxious, or I'm feeling afraid of something.
huh. Hmm.
So yeah, it's I used to have this joke about laughter is the best medicine. People would say laughter is the best medicine. You've heard that, right? Laughter is the best
Of
medicine.
course
Well,
it is. Yeah.
not if you have gonorrhea. You know, you can laugh and laugh and laugh all you want. You can laugh for days, and it's still gonna burn, right?
Ah,
Penicillin. Penicillin is the best medicine there.
in that case, yeah.
So
So, so talk to us about the feedback that you're getting from your book. I mean, God, that's a long time. I
yeah,
thought my book was 4 years in the making. Yours was 14. So
yeah.
what's the feedback been like since you released it?
It's been amazing, actually. It's been really, really good, and it surprised me in a way. But what else would I say? Oh, it sucks. Everyone hates it. Now, what I love hearing is people say, "This is the first time I've actually felt some hope. This is the
Oh,
first time people have someone's actually showed me what is going on and what I can do about it, and empowered me." Other than saying, watch your thoughts, they're not real. That doesn't work. You can't beat
yeah.
thoughts on their own turf. So the things that I love getting back from people is like, this is the first time I've really understood where this comes from. And I kind of do a mini version of what I did with you in the book. Is like, find your alarm, like find it.
Mhm.
And that's basically that's your younger self. That's the part of you that's asking for your attention. And if you can connect with that younger part of yourself, the alarm and the anxiety just fades away. It's not like it's gone forever. Like you'll always have that tendency. It's always going to be a sore point. Like if someone's bitten by a dog when they're a child, they're always going to have an apprehension towards dogs,
Right.
to some extent. But if you have 1,000 good representations with a dog, it fades away. Like it's still there, it's still in the background, but it doesn't bother you.
Wow. So we're almost at the end of our time. I feel like I can talk to you forever. It's so easy to chat with you. So do you have any other words of wisdom? I mean, you've shared so much. I really hope my listeners who have navigated anxiety have some hope now and some idea of things they can do. And the book, of course. But is there anything else you want to share? You want to leave us with? Any other thoughts?
It's just really finding the alarm in your body. Like what I did with you, go back, pick a trauma in your life. Like don't pick the worst one, but pick a trauma in a quiet time. Close your eyes and really find in your body where you feel it. Like a lot of people, what I'll do is I'll go into the real, I'll say, is it sharp? Is it dull? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it, is there a pressure to it? Like I really itemize it. But with you localize it so quickly, I thought we'll just go right into it. But it's finding it in your body and then, feeling your own compassionate touch. Put your hand over it, really feel your compassionate touch to that part that's alarmed in you. Because that's the child in you that's still asking for your attention. And if you don't give that child attention, it gets louder and louder and louder, and your alarm anxiety just gets worse and worse and worse. So it's really finding the alarm in your system and learning how to soothe that. And the book talks, we've gone over this in a very sort of superficial way, but the book talks specifically about exactly what you do when you find that alarm, when you itemize it, when you really localize it. How you do it on a regular day-to-day practice, even if it's just for a minute 4 times a day, even connecting with it when you feel great. Because most people, what they'll do is they'll connect with their anxiety and alarm when they feel anxiety and alarm. And if you connect with it when you feel good, as well as when you're feeling anxious or alarmed, then you really start getting this sort of circumferential feeling of connection to it. So it just doesn't come up when you feel bad. You can actually bring that younger self into when you feel really good too. And the last thing I guess I would say is play. Like remember what it was like when you played. Like when I was younger, I used to ride my bike everywhere. I played hockey. And I played guitar. So I really picked those things up again. And really when I do those things, I bring that younger self with me. And I make a conscious point of if we go for a walk in nature. I sound a bit schizophrenic here myself because I'm like, when I take him for a walk, like I don't say it out loud, like enjoy the trees. But internally to me, I bring him with me.
Yeah.
He's the one that's suffering.
Yeah.
And if you can soothe his suffering or her suffering,
yeah,
then a lot of your own anxiety just fades away because there's no energy to feed those scary thoughts anymore.
I love it. Yeah, I definitely feel empowered around that. I really appreciate the exercise that we did.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful. And the fact that people can do this for themselves is amazing. So what's next for you, Dr. Russ?
I don't know. Good question, Michelle. I really don't know. Like, I really don't know. I have a friend of mine who lives in Dubai, and she's starting a little room for people that it's free. That I can sort of give advice in and that kind of thing. It's on Mighty Networks. I think it's the Anxiety MD on Mighty Networks. And so she started that little room. She's, she helps you with Instagram, that kind of thing too. But right now, the other thing that I have to do is do the audio version of my book. And I've been putting that off and putting it off and putting it off. So I'm really sort of organically trying to just let things go the way they're going to go. I don't have a business plan. I don't have anything like that. I just, it took me so long to get this book out that I'm just it's only been out 4 months now. So I'm just letting things see where the wind takes me kind of thing.
But people can follow you on Instagram. What's your Instagram handle?
Everything is the Anxiety MD. You can see it YouTube, Facebook, everything is just the Anxiety, all one word, the Anxiety MD. And that's the easiest way to find me.
Awesome. So we'll follow you. We'll make sure that we know whatever turns you take, we can follow you. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Michelle. It's been fun.
Yay. And your book again, what's the title? Could you hold it up for people?
Anxiety RX. It's Amazon is probably the easiest place to get it.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Russ. I appreciate you. I will see you around the clubhouse.
You sure will.
All right. Take care.
Yeah.